Most people assumed that if he wasn't quitting, he'd be announcing some sort of less than thrilling endorsement from a Republican elected official in Indiana somewhere. People started looking for Mitch Daniels' cell phone number. But instead of something like that, Ted Cruz ended up at this event today in Indiana announcing his own 2016 version of the patron saint of the pancreas. He announced his own would-be, might-be, someday running mate, Carly Fiorina.
Some might ask, why now? It's tradition that a vice presidential nominee is announced at the convention. It is unusual to make the announcement as early as we're doing so now. I make this announcement today so that you, the voters in Indiana, the voters in Nebraska, the voters in South Dakota and Washington State and California and across the country, so that you will know what you will get. The voters deserve to know. I have come to the conclusion that if I am nominated to be President of the United States, that I will run on a ticket with my vice presidential nominee, Carly Fiorina.
Now, Carly Fiorina ran for president herself this year. She came in 7th place in Iowa. And then in New Hampshire, she came in 7th place again. And then she dropped out. This was her second time running for office. She also ran for a United States Senate seat against Barbara Boxer in California in the deep red Republican-leaning year of 2010. But even under that year's very favorable electoral conditions, Carly Fiorina lost that Senate race in California by double digits. But the Ted Cruz campaign needs a new story. The Ted Cruz campaign needs a game-changing stunt right now, and they are apparently banking on this being it. They're telling Republican voters in the states that have yet to vote, listen, now you may not have been sold on Ted Cruz so far, but try this on for size. If Donald Trump doesn't keep winning state after state after state, if Donald Trump doesn't go on to win the Republican nomination, and if the Republican presidential nominating process therefore goes to a contested convention, and if that contested convention, the Republican Party decides to choose Ted Cruz as their nominee, and if the Republican Party then subsequently chooses to honor Ted Cruz's choice of who he would like his running mate to be, and if after all of that, that Republican ticket goes on to beat the Democratic ticket in November, and Ted Cruz becomes president, and if thereafter Ted Cruz dies in office, then Carly Fiorina will get to be president. If you haven't been sold on Ted Cruz before, does that sell you on voting for Ted Cruz? Even if nothing else did? You think it's going to work? Does the 7th place finisher from Iowa and New Hampshire hold that much sway over the remaining Republican voters in the country? Is this the key to unlock their hearts? I mean, honestly, nothing against Carly Fiorina here, nothing against Richard Schweiker, who played the Carly Fiorina role for Ronald Reagan in 1976. But stunts like these are less about the identity and the characteristics of the person who gets chosen for the stunt. It's more about the timing, right? It's more about trying to shake up a race that a candidate is otherwise losing. Ted Cruz might have named anybody to be his theoretical might-be vice presidential running mate today. The point of doing something like this is just to try to change the news around Ted Cruz to be something other than the story of how badly Donald Trump is beating him in the race for the Republican presidential nomination. Not to put too fine a point on it, but 38 states have voted so far on the Republican side. Of the 38 states, Donald Trump has won 26 of them, including his blowout wins last night in 5 states. His smallest margin of victory last night was 30 points in Connecticut. That was the smallest margin. And actually 30 points, that's how badly he beat John Kasich in Connecticut. Donald Trump's margin of victory over Ted Cruz in that state last night was 46 points. The big delegate prize last night was Pennsylvania. Donald Trump not only won statewide in Pennsylvania, he won every congressional district in Pennsylvania, he won every county in Pennsylvania. Ted Cruz's big claim His big claim to fame so far in the presidential race has been that he's been able to line up delegates, even in states where he's losing. That's the way he's been able to stay seemingly competitive. Well, in Pennsylvania last night, there was that big pot of 54 unbound delegates who were not going to be committed by the results of any vote. Well, it turns out that big pot of 54 unbound delegates, which you might think Ted Cruz would monopolize, turns out they're also going almost completely to Donald Trump. The Trump campaign today bragging that of the 54 unbound delegates from Pennsylvania, at least 39 of the 54 are pledged overtly to Donald Trump, but the number who vote for Trump will probably rise into the 40s once those delegates feel the pressure to side with the guy who overwhelmingly destroyed both Kasich and Cruz, not just in that state overall, but in every single congressional district and every county in the state. I mean, overall last night, there were 118 pledged delegates at stake in the 5 states. 118. Donald Trump won 110 of them. Over the last 2 weeks, there have been 267 delegates at stake on the Republican side. Of those 267, Ted Cruz has won 5. Out of the last 6 states that have voted, not only has Ted Cruz lost all 6 of the last 6 states, he has come in 3rd place behind John Kasich in 5 out of the 6 states. And so, yeah, Ted Cruz needs a news story in the news about himself and his campaign as he heads into Indiana, which his campaign all but admits he must win in order to justify staying in the race, but which the polls indicate even today he quite possibly will lose. And so if you were Ted Cruz at this point, imagine yourself as Ted Cruz. You would probably be willing to try something audacious on a day like this, right? It's not hard to imagine yourself in Ted Cruz's position today. Imagine yourself concluding that maybe you should try to add to your personal appeal by simply grafting a whole second person onto yourself and your campaign, who some people might like better than you for any number of reasons. And I know everything associated with Ronald Reagan, by definition, looks like a great idea to today's Republicans. But this is one of those Republican ideas. This is one of those Reagan ideas that didn't work. I mean, this is a Reagan idea where even though the guy he picked was the patron saint of the pancreas, right? An utterly unobjectionable choice. This is a Ronald Reagan idea that did not work out for Ronald Reagan. I know everything Ronald Reagan did is supposed to be perfect. The whole VP stunt he tried back in '76, when they wanted all the news stories to be about Dick Schweiker, all the news stories back in '76 instead ended up being about how desperate Ronald Reagan was and what a terrible stunt he just pulled. And so what happened today? Yes, this has happened once before in American politics. It did not work when Reagan tried it in '76. I'm not sure anybody thinks it's going to work this time either, but we will see. Watch this space. You never know. We'll be right back.
I know 2 girls that I just adore. I'm so happy I can see them more. 'Cause we travel on the bus all day. We get to play. We get to play. I won't bore you with any more of the song.